We got news from the governor, I'm sure you got it as well, that Brighton Park's a no-go. Can you first of all give us a reaction, and what would be the plan B now that you can't use this site?
Yeah, well, first of all, the mission is still very much alive. I've said from the very beginning, especially as winter is approaching and weather is shifting, is to get people out of police stations, women, children sleeping on the floors, those who are sleeping outside, to remove people from police districts. And we've been doing that work. In fact, I believe the latest number that I have, there were almost 4,000 people in police districts as well as the airport. That number is now down to under 500. And so that work continues because of the type of collaboration that we're bringing. And look, this site, when the state of Illinois took control over this contract, going into this agreement with Garda World, they fully understood that we were providing the necessary assessments to take a look at the environmental dynamics that exist that we figured because of bad toxicity and bad policies over the course of generations, that discovering toxicity there wasn't a surprise. And so as we were going through that process, the state of Illinois continued to build this base camp, knowing full well that we were providing this assessment. And so all of what we have done up until this point, continuing to bring people together, the state of Illinois knew that this assessment was happening and felt confident enough to continue to build on this site and to go into a contract with Garda World. Now look, there's been third-party validators that have indicated, Dr. Buchanan is one of them, the University of Illinois at Chicago, that this site is safe. The state did not provide any additional guidelines or any sort of methodology in which they were requiring us to go by. So we used the standards that were available to us. The site has been substantiated at being safe by third-party validators. And again, the contract that the state of Illinois went into with Garda World, as they continue to build out on this site, there was no indication throughout this entire process that a standard or a different methodology was preferable by the state of Illinois. Now, as far as our plan is still very much alive. As I said, that as we continue to remove people out of police districts, that assignment that I've given to my administration, we're working through that. And again, from 4,000 people that were sleeping outside or in police districts and an airport, we've reduced that number significantly down to 500. And we're going to continue to assess sites because the mission is still very much alive. We have to make sure that this migrant crisis and this mission, as you all know, is an international crisis. In fact, we have to continue to plan ahead. It's imperative. This time last year, between November and December, 8 buses came. Between 2 months this time last year. We've received over 80 buses alone just in the month of November. And so it's clear that forces that want to continue to send people to the city of Chicago, that have always been clear that we have to be forthright and plan ahead, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
So, Mayor, an outdoor encampment, whether it's at Brighton Park or the one at 115th and Halsted, you're still on that mission of finding an outdoor encampment.
Well, what our mission is to make sure that we are removing people off of the floors of police stations. And so we're still looking at brick and mortar. And this assignment, as I've put forth several months ago, where the base camp was an option for us to be able to address this crisis. That's the leadership that's required in this moment. That's the leadership that I've provided. So it's not just base camps, it's the continuous work to work with the faith community as we've done, but also to look at brick and mortar spaces. But we have to plan ahead, and part of that planning is looking at base camps. Yep.
Mayor, was it a mistake to not be more forthright with what was found at that site? Because the report makes it clear that the testers were aware that there were mercury and other issues there in mid-November. So could your administration have not shared that sooner, and we could have moved on from this location
Well,
sooner?
is
that a misstep on your part?
Well, the agreement is with a private entity, so there are different processes that take place when it's a private space, right? Now, if it just hold on a second, okay? I appreciate you being patient. I really do. This private space and this agreement that the state of Illinois went into with Garda World, that because it is a private space, that there are processes and procedures that apply differently than a publicly owned space. What we've said all along, we've always been forthright that we were testing for environmental hazards. That was never a question of what our work entailed. And so, as I said, that we would make that report available based upon the guidelines and standards, the legal standards that are established in order for that information to be made available. I've kept my word. That report is available throughout that entire process as the state went into an agreement with Gardaworld to build this site. There was no discussions along the way throughout this entire process that the methodology that we were using or the standard and the guidelines that we were using established by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, that there was no additional information that was provided that would have led us to believe that this particular report that has been validated to be safe by third parties, that somehow that operation will be halted.
Mayor, we haven't heard you state what your plan B is. What's plan B?
The plan is consistent with what I've been implementing from the very beginning. Here's the plan: to eliminate police districts as grounds for shelter. That has always been the plan. And that plan has consisted of finding brick and mortar locations, which we have stood up a new location darn near every single week. And mind you, that the international crisis that I've inherited, that the previous city council did not budget this particular operation for 2023. So we literally had to find brick and mortar locations, create a budget and an entire operation essentially from scratch. And so whether it's base camps at multiple sites, whether it's the faith community, whether it's the federal government, the state, county government, I have brought together all of these forces to address this crisis. Our plan is still the same, that we have to make sure that the federal government does its part to provide support for these individuals who are asylum seekers protected by international law. The state of Illinois went into a contract with Gardaworld building on this site, knowing full well that assessments were being handled. And keep in mind, whether it's brick and mortar spots, base camps, there's a location that I know that you all are reporting on, an old CVS, I believe it was. That was a site that the state of Illinois was looking at 6 months ago. I'm moving with incredible expediency. We can't wait 6 months before a decision is made in order for a site to be made available for a crisis that's happening today. And so my plan, I just want to make sure that I'm thorough, because I know that some of you have expressed some concerns that perhaps I'm not as thorough enough. So I want to be thorough enough that the plan is still to make sure that individuals who are being bused to the city of Chicago from a variety of cities, that they are not living outside and they're not living in police districts. And so far, the 4,000 at the height of those coming to the city of Chicago are being sent here. That number is no longer 4,000. We have methodically, we have with dignity, we have done this with care to remove people out of police districts, off of floors, out from the inclement weather, into brick and mortar spaces, as well as looking at how we plan ahead. And base camps are a part of that planning, just like brick and mortar is a part of that planning, just like resettlement is a part of that planning, just like challenging other villages, because this is a sanctuary state. Other villages like Oak Park, which has stepped up and they have taken on individuals who are seeking asylum in the city of Chicago, that this crisis clearly is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Mayor, you talked about expediency as a concern. How frustrated were you when you learned the news from the state today that maybe there isn't as full transparency between the two government agencies as you might have hoped?
Well, look, I've made this commitment that as mayor of the city of Chicago, I know what my responsibilities are. And I've been very forthright about those responsibilities. And working with the county government and President Preckwinkle and I, we have shared and we've exchanged ideas. You know that she went to her legislative body, just like I went to my legislative body, and she has secured $100 million for healthcare related services. The state of Illinois, as well as my administration, have been in constant communication around how we address this crisis. Look, there's a lot of pressure that's being applied. And that pressure, quite frankly, is coming from individuals who want to see discord and chaos in the city. And so I'm going to continue to move as quickly as I possibly can, as I've done these first 6.5 months in office, that not only have we've set up contracts, renegotiating these contracts so that we are providing cost savings to this operation. We have established brick and mortar locations. We have explored the base camp model and a whole host of other dynamics that provide us with the type of infrastructure and operations that are needed to fulfill this mission. And so my commitment is to continue to work with the state of Illinois, the federal government, the county government, and the faith community to address this mission and this crisis.
Is there another base camp location? Is there another basic camp location
Yes.
that could replace 38th and Brighton Park that you've got in mind that you could shift gears to working with the state to start moving quickly because of the weather and the need?
There are multiple sites that we've looked at. You all are aware that we had an entire ordinance in resolution centered around 115th and Halted, and this is why leadership is important. Because, but so what I guess what I'm trying to offer is this: if you just give me a chance to answer the question, is that whether it's 115th and Halted that has already been identified, as other folks have asked for Plan B, I've been planning for Plan B, C, and D, and F, E, and F from the very moment that I became the mayor of the city of Chicago. And so whether it's 115th and Halted or 38th in California or any other brick and mortar location that we've identified that can serve the purpose of this mission, know that my administration is planning ahead. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.